Well, good day to all of you once again. Another story. So I was asked by Rebecca Chalky if my wife had any wildlife encounters, any unusual encounters, any scary encounters, that sort of thing, whilst we were together in this period. And yes, she did, quite a few in fact. So I'll kick off with this one, and I'll tell you about a number of them as time goes by.
These are true tales of my African adventures. May this inspire you, deter you, caution you, and above all, entertain you.
When we were in northern Namibia, and our quarry on that occasion was mambas and very big pythons. We needed some really, really big pythons because they were spectacular. They calmed down well, they became pretty tame, although there's no such thing as completely tame snake. They just don't have that sort of sentiment, they don't have that demeanor. A snake will remain dangerous, and there are snakes that have killed their handlers many times, pythons and others, and killed their children and killed others. It would be unfair to tell anyone the snake that they're about to pick up or hold, or that has been handed over to them, is tame. I have a few stories about those events as well. Anyway, don't ever be fooled by the tame snake scenario, but snakes do get tamed to an extent. And these very large pythons were really spectacular. So we were looking for big pythons, and there was an ancient slab of rock which protruded slightly from the ground. It was a slab of rock about 20 meters by about 15 meters with smaller slabs around it. It's like an incredible moonscape. And over many, many years, every creature under the sun had burrowed under there. And bears mainly, and wild pigs had burrowed under there, the type that we call the vlakvark, the type of a bush pig, and various other creatures. And it is the perfect place for a giant python. And here the owners of the farm had on one occasion seen the python in a very bad way, having grappled obviously with a young leopard, maybe an adult leopard, or with a bush pig. They had seen it at one stage swallow a young bush pig, and it had been very badly injured but healed completely. And we were very interested, we were intrigued, we wanted to see this snake. It was obviously a female because they are the larger ones. Problem is, at that time Namibia was fighting a bush war with terrorists, SWAPO terrorists, and they were coming from the north, from Angola, and they at that time were committing gruesome murders in farmhouses, killing men, women and children in the worst possible way they could dream up, which communists do seem to enjoy. And so we had to be armed. So we had automatic rifles when we went out. On one occasion we even carried hand grenades with us because we knew there were terrorists just around that particular farm. And so we went kind of heavily armed. Now, as heavily armed as we were and as prepared as we were, we remained young and irresponsible. So we took Dawn, my wife, with us. She was young and very beautiful, and she loved adventure as well, and was quizzing the staff all the time about the terrorists. And those staff members, the tribal people who lived there and worked on those farms, called them Sandros. That is what they called them, their name for the terrorists. And they said they were in the hills and they would be watching us and preparing for the time when they would come down to launch an attack on the house. And so the farmer no longer stayed in the house, he was in town. They lived in town because they knew the attack would be coming. We also had to be aware that mines were planted on the roads as well, so we drove with the wheels slightly off the tracks in the grass and not quite on the center of the tracks, and if there was any disturbance we would of course stop. But they were clever, they knew how to disguise mines. So when we got to the area, the vicinity of the python's lair, it was a long walk and it was very hot. So Dawn, who had been busy with us for some time that day, was a little tired. We said she could stay at the vehicle. But we had all the weapons, except we had a German Luger. It's a very nice looking weapon actually, if you like weapons. And we said, all right, you keep the Luger. So we cocked it for her and she sat there in the shade in the vehicle with the Luger. Idiots that we were, because you know these guys usually came down the mountains carrying semi-automatic or automatic weapons. And when we got there, it was a bit late in the morning, it was a bit hot, and so the python tracks were evident, but it had obviously gone back into the hole to get some shade. And I noticed a movement in the tree. There was a branch hanging near me from this tree, and there was a baby python. And then we saw another movement and there was another baby python. Then on the ground we saw a movement, and before long we had collected 20-something, 23 or 22 baby pythons. Now, we had come across this python's lair just at the time, the day before or the day after her eggs had hatched. They actually lay their eggs in these lairs and coil around them and protect them until hatching. And they normally hatch around the middle of December or the beginning of December onwards actually. That was their time, and these were now hatching. It was such a stroke of luck, and we were able to photograph them. Although, do you think I can find the photographs? Ha ha. But we will look to see if we can still find one somewhere. And we caught as many as we could of these baby pythons, released a lot of them, took a few home for raising because we knew they'd be good genetic stock. And so we spent some time there. It was quite delightful actually. We had a lot of fun. And then remembered that we actually had another member of the party, i.e. my wife, and we went back, and she bumped into us almost as we left because she had felt the hair raising up on the back of her neck and was very, very unsettled. She said she felt she was being looked at, and so we will never know what was happening in that dense bush around us. But there she came back, Luger in hand, and we all went, rifles ready as ever, back to the vehicle and back to the farmhouse. No terrorist incident, although we almost got involved in one later on. Hey, by the way, I do have Patreon, so you can join me there too.